Hey guys, tonight we step into a world where swords clash, banners flutter, and one man's roar echoes across kingdoms. Richard the Lionheart. Picture the bustling medieval courts of England, the scent of roasting meat mingling with the sharp tang of iron and the murmurs of nobles scheming over flickering candlelight. You probably won't survive the fierce battles and tangled politics that define his reign. But hey, that's the thrill of history. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are born into the powerful Angevin dynasty in 1157, a scion of kings and queens whose ambitions reach far beyond England's shores. Young Richard's world is a tapestry of castles, tournaments, and whispered intrigues, where loyalty is as valuable as gold, and betrayal can be just a breath away. His childhood smells of horse sweat, leather armor, and parchment scrolls filled with lessons in war and statecraft. Historians still argue whether Richard's legendary courage stemmed more from innate boldness or the pressure to prove himself in a crowded royal family. Here's a quirky tidbit. Richard was known to have a fiery temper as a child, once reportedly throwing a tantrum that toppled a servant's table royal drama, medieval style. As dawn breaks over the English countryside, you feel the stirrings of a life destined to roar. You stand beside Richard as he grows, a young lion learning to roar amidst a web of alliances, betrayals, and familial strife. The air is heavy with the sounds of sword drills and the distant murmur of court politics. As Richard is trained, not only in battle, but in the art of ruling, you witness his rise from the shadows of his father, Henry II, whose grip on power is as tenuous as it is strong. The court is a labyrinth of rivalries, with Richard vying for his place among his siblings, each of them a thorn in his side. You feel the tension in every political move, each decision weighed with the knowledge that in this world, the slightest misstep can lead to ruin. His early years are spent navigating this treacherous landscape, where loyalty is fleeting and betrayal is a constant companion. Historians still argue whether Richard's motivations were driven more by his need for personal glory or his sense of duty to his kingdom. A quirky tidbit: Richard was reportedly fond of reading romance tales from the chivalric tradition, fueling his dreams of heroism and knighthood. As you watch young Richard embrace the challenges of court life, you feel the building momentum of a ruler on the verge of something great or something dangerous. You stand at the crossroads of destiny as Richard, now a young man, listens intently to Pope Urban II's rallying cry at the Council of Clermont. The air hums with fervor, the cries of the crowd blending with the call to arms. Crusade. The word echoes through the crowd like a sacred incantation, a summons to fulfill the promise of glory and faith. Richard's heart stirs with ambition and conviction as he watches the Pope stir the masses to action. The world around you shifts as nobles, soldiers, and peasants alike rise to join the holy cause. The smell of leather, sweat, and incense fills the air as banners bearing crosses are unfurled, signaling the start of the First Crusade. Richard, ever the passionate warrior, finds himself drawn to this call. His vision of glory in the Holy Land becomes intertwined with his sense of duty to both his kingdom and faith. Historians debate whether Richard's participation was motivated by a true spiritual calling or the political power and influence that a successful crusade could bring. A quirky detail, Richard's war horses were said to have been trained to recognize the sound of a battle horn, making them formidable in combat. As the drums of war beat louder, you feel the pull of history, and Richard's path leads him toward a fate that will forever alter the course of his life and the lives of many others. You feel the heat of the Mediterranean sun bearing down as Richard begins his long journey toward the Holy Land. The sea breeze carries the sense of salt and fresh canvas, mingling with the hum of activity aboard ships. As the crusading army sets sail, the waves crash beneath you as knights, soldiers, and pilgrims alike embark on their sacred quest, driven by faith, duty, and the promise of glory. Richard's fleet, larger than most, cuts through the waters with precision. You watch as his leadership becomes evident, even in these early stages. He is a king, but more importantly, a warrior bold, commanding, and unwavering in his pursuit of Jerusalem. His presence aboard the ship is one of quiet authority, a figurehead not just of England, but of a crusading force that will leave its mark on the world. Historians debate how much of Richard's success in the early days of the crusade can be attributed to his military skill versus his ability to inspire those around him. A quirky tidbit on his journey: Richard's favorite pastimes included jousting and writing poetry, his verses filled with the longing of a knight for glory. As the ships glide through the Mediterranean, you feel the quiet tension in the air, the promise of war, and the weight of destiny hanging over them like a dark cloud. You stand in the midst of the Crusader camp, where the night is alive with the crackle of fires and the murmur of planning. The air is thick with the scent of burning wood, wet earth, and iron, as knights sharpen swords and strategists gather to plan the next move. Richard, still fresh from his voyage, surveys his men with quiet determination, his eyes fixed on the horizon, on the Holy Land that now beckons him. The tension is palpable. The army has grown fatigued from the long journey, but Richard's resolve is unshaken. You see him move among his soldiers, offering words of encouragement, rallying them with the promise of Jerusalem and the triumph of their cause. He stands tall, a lion among men, embodying the spirit of the crusade. His leadership is magnetic. Those around him follow, not just because of his title, but because of the fire in his eyes. Historians debate whether Richard's charisma was his greatest strength, overshadowing even his military prowess. A quirky detail: Richard had an affinity for ransacking royal kitchens. He was notorious for his appetite, often demanding feasts fit for a king. As the night deepens, you feel the crackling energy of anticipation in the camp. Tomorrow, another step toward Jerusalem, another test for the Lionheart. You march at the head of Richard's forces, the dust rising in clouds as the heat of the Middle Eastern sun presses down on the soldiers. The air smells of arid earth and sweat, punctuated by the occasional scent of roasting meat or herbs. The rhythm of the march is steady, but you can feel the strain in the Crusaders' bones, each step toward Jerusalem, a test of endurance. Richard, mounted on his warhorse, surveys his army with a steady gaze. You see him as more than a king. He is a leader who understands the cost of this journey, who feels the weight of the lives in his charge. His armor gleams in the sunlight, but his face is set in grim determination, knowing that every move in these foreign lands is a gamble. As the army moves deeper into the Levant, Richard's reputation grows. He is a king who commands respect, not just through force, but through resolve. In his presence, a beacon of strength and honor. Historians argue whether Richard's success was solely due to his military genius, or whether his reputation as a warrior king played a more pivotal role in securing victories. A quirky tidbit: Richard had a close bond with his horse, named Cavalier, whom he was known to take great care of, even during the fiercest campaigns. You feel the tension in the air rise, and as the horizon stretches ahead, the promise of Battle of Jerusalem feels closer than ever. The dust settles as Richard's army approaches the city of Acre, a strategic prize that stands between them and their final goal, Jerusalem. The city's high stone walls rise ominously against the sky, and the scent of salty sea air mixes with the pungent smell of sweat, burning oil, and anticipation. You see Richard at the forefront of his troops, his face unwavering, his eyes sharp as he surveys the formidable fortress before him. The siege of Acre begins, and the sound of hammering on siege engines fills the air. You watch as massive wooden towers are constructed, the great battering rams dragged into position, and siege catapults set to launch their deadly payloads. Richard's presence is felt everywhere, his strategic brilliance evident in the careful placement of troops and the execution of the siege. Historians debate whether Richard's siege tactics were truly revolutionary, or simply a product of his ability to inspire the loyalty and courage needed to execute them effectively. A quirky tidbit: Richard's penchant for playing chess during moments of downtime became well known among his men, and he was said to be an expert strategist on the board, just as he was on the battlefield. As the siege drags on, the days feel long and exhausting, the relentless assault on the city walls becoming a waiting game. But Richard, with his unyielding will and calculated patience, keeps his men focused. Jerusalem still awaits. You feel the weight of the siege bearing down as Richard's forces continue their relentless assault on Acre. The city walls are scarred with the marks of war cracks widening beneath the battering rams, stones splintering under the pressure. The camp smells of sweat and salt, as knights and common soldiers alike toil in the heat, their strength tested day after day. Every strike of the hammer, every turn of the siege engine, echoes through the camp as the city's defenses begin to falter. You watch Richard on horseback, directing his troops with calm precision. His leadership is a steadying force, and despite the grueling circumstances, his men follow him with unwavering loyalty. His eyes remain fixed on the city ahead, determined to break its defenses. The battle is not just for the city, it's for the future of the crusade itself. Historians debate whether Richard's focused ambition and relentless pursuit of victory were driven more by a desire to reclaim the Holy Land or a need to assert his authority and power. A quirky detail: Richard had a peculiar ritual before battle. He would visit his stables to check on his horses and ensure they were well groomed. A strange but comforting act before the chaos of war. As the siege drags into its final days, the tension is palpable. Every soldier knows the fall of Acre is not just a military victory, but a turning point in their crusade, a key step closer to Jerusalem. You feel the air shift as Richard and his forces press closer to victory in Acre. The gates finally fall, and the Crusaders pour into the city, their victory marked by both jubilation and a heavy sense of responsibility. The streets of Acre are flooded with the sights and sounds of triumph, but the taste of victory is bittersweet, as the cost of this battle, both in terms of lives lost and the toll it's taken on their morale, is impossible to ignore. As the city falls, Richard walks the streets, overseeing the aftermath. The banners of the Crusaders are raised high, but you can see the weariness in Richard's eyes. He has led his men through countless battles, and his reputation as a brilliant strategist is only reinforced. Yet, even in victory, You sense that his mind is already focused on the next step, Jerusalem. Historians debate whether Richard's strategic brilliance and his ability to win battles with minimal loss of life were the true key to his success, or whether it was his unyielding determination that led him to triumph in such a turbulent and chaotic campaign. A quirky tidbit: Richard was known to have a quick temper, but after victories, he would often reward his men with feasts, paying homage to them with lavish celebrations to restore their spirits. As you stand in the conquered city, you feel the shift in the Crusaders' journey. A city has fallen, but the journey to Jerusalem is still far from over. You watch Richard as he leads his victorious forces onward, his eyes fixed on the horizon where Jerusalem looms. The city of Acre is still echoing with the sounds of victory, but the journey ahead is even more daunting. The army marches under banners, their steps heavy with the realization that Jerusalem is the ultimate prize, and its capture is no mere military objective. It is the culmination of a dream that has spanned centuries. The roads are long and difficult, the terrain unforgiving. The heat of the desert saps the strength of even the most seasoned soldiers, and the toll of the journey becomes apparent on every face. Yet Richard remains unwavering, his leadership unshaken, rallying his troops with a fierce energy that keeps them moving forward. Historians still argue whether Richard's dogged determination and tactical brilliance were enough to propel the crusade towards success, or if luck played an even larger role in his victories. A quirky detail: Richard had a particular fondness for falcons, and his role as a master of falconry earned him respect even among his enemies, who were impressed by his mastery of the ancient art. As you follow Richard's army through the blistering heat, you feel the weight of the task ahead. Jerusalem waits, but the road to the holy city is not just one of physical distance, it is a path of both personal and collective sacrifice. You find yourself swept up in the anticipation and rising tension as Richard's army approaches the gates of Jerusalem. The city stands before them like a fortress of legend, its walls rising up to the sky, gleaming under the relentless sun. You feel the heat on your skin and the weight of centuries of history pressing down on the Crusaders. For them, Jerusalem is more than a city. It is a symbol, a goal that has driven them across continents, a land of holy importance that must be taken at all costs. Richard rides at the head of the army, his eyes fixed on the city, his face a mask of determination. The weight of his responsibilities, both as king and crusader, rests heavy on his shoulders. Yet his resolve remains unbroken. He orders the army to halt just outside the city, calculating their next move with his usual precision. You see his mind working, weighing the best strategies to secure Jerusalem without unnecessary bloodshed. Historians debate whether Richard's careful approach was a result of his diplomatic acumen or his desire to preserve his forces for future campaigns. A quirky detail: Richard was known to occasionally consult with his trusted falcons before making important decisions, an odd ritual, but one he believed brought clarity. As the siege begins, the atmosphere is electric, and you can feel the weight of destiny in the air. Jerusalem is within reach, but you know that the road ahead is still fraught with danger and uncertainty. You stand alongside Richard as the siege of Jerusalem intensifies. The city's high walls seem impenetrable, but you feel the energy of Richard's army, now fully immersed in the siege. The sound of hammers and the groaning of siege engines fill the air as the Crusaders work tirelessly, battering the city's defenses, preparing for the final push. There's a determined quietness to the camp now, a focus that underscores the significance of this moment. This is the culmination of years of struggle, and Jerusalem, the holy city, will be claimed by either faith or force. Richard, despite the fierce exterior, moves through his troops with a calm authority, offering guidance where needed and encouraging his soldiers with a steady hand. He knows the stakes of this battle not just for his kingdom, but for the entire crusade. You see him consulting with his commanders, coordinating their attacks with military precision. Historians debate whether Richard's approach was purely pragmatic, or if his desire to lead from the front as a knight fueled the intensity of the siege. A quirky tidbit: Richard had a habit of sneaking away from the main camp at night to practice swordsmanship alone, believing that the quiet of the night allowed him to sharpen both his mind and his skills. As night falls over Jerusalem, the first cracks appear in the city's walls. You can almost feel the city holding its breath as the endgame nears. The siege is far from over, but you sense that victory is within reach. You find yourself amidst the chaos of battle as Richard's forces breach the gates of Jerusalem. The sound of triumphant war cries mingles with the clash of steel, and the air is thick with the dust of the conquered city. You see Richard leading his knights into the heart of the city, his armor gleaming under the sun, his sword raised high in victory. The streets are filled with the rush of men, their faces alight with the joy of conquest. Yet you cannot ignore the sorrow and tension that hangs heavy in the air. The city, though captured, is not fully claimed. The Crusaders must secure their hold on Jerusalem, ensuring its future under their rule. Richard's mind remains focused, his eyes ever watchful, as he oversees the troops and organizes the defense of the city. His efforts are tactical, his presence commanding, yet you sense the weariness in his bones after so many years of bloodshed. Historians still debate the extent of Richard's role in the final capture of Jerusalem. Was it his military genius, or the combined strength of the Crusader forces that made the conquest possible? A quirky detail after the city was taken, Richard reportedly made it a point to visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, taking a moment of quiet reflection despite the victorious chaos around him. As the day ends, the weight of Jerusalem's capture settles in. The city is now under Richard's control, but the future remains uncertain. His victory has been hard-earned, and the cost, both in blood and spirit, hangs over him. You stand in the aftermath of the battle, where the streets of Jerusalem are still stained with the echoes of conquest. The Crusaders, now victorious, begin the difficult task of governing a city that holds both religious and strategic significance. The weight of leadership falls on Richard's shoulders, and you feel the complexity of his position. The city is a patchwork of faiths: Christians, Muslims, and Jews, and maintaining peace is no simple task. Richard, though battle-worn, immediately sets to work, securing the city. He oversees the placement of his knights in key positions, ensuring that Jerusalem remains stable under Crusader control. But Richard is also a man of faith, and his relationship with the Pope is paramount in legitimizing his rule. You watch him attend Mass in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, offering prayers for guidance, while also meeting with religious leaders to negotiate the city's future. Historians still debate whether Richard's leadership after the conquest was a model of political diplomacy or simply a temporary solution to an ongoing problem. A quirky tidbit: Richard, despite his reputation as a warrior, was known to carry a small Bible with him during the crusade, and he would often read passages before battle, seeking divine guidance. As the days pass, you feel the tension in the air as Richard balances his duties as a king, a warrior, and a man of faith. The future of Jerusalem and his legacy hangs in the balance. You watch Richard in the heart of Jerusalem, a city he has captured but now must hold. The streets are filled with the sounds of rebuilding hammers, striking stone, the murmur of negotiations, the hesitant steps of locals wary of the Crusader presence. You can feel the weight of expectation on Richard's shoulders, the pressure to maintain peace in a city brimming with religious tensions. Despite the victory, the fragile nature of his conquest becomes apparent. The city is not just a military prize, it is a symbol, one that demands more than just brute strength to govern. Richard's leadership now extends beyond the battlefield. He works tirelessly with his council to ensure that the various religious groups in Jerusalem are treated with a measure of respect, though always with the Crusader agenda at the forefront. His dealings with the Pope become more frequent, as Richard seeks to solidify his hold on the city and gain the Church's blessing for his actions. Historians debate the long-term effectiveness of Richard's approach to governing Jerusalem. Was his pragmatic style a necessary measure for short-term stability, or did it sow the seeds of future conflict? A quirky detail. During this period, Richard was known to write letters to his mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, filled with both political strategies and personal thoughts, an unusual but telling glimpse into the heart of a king who was both a son and a sovereign. As the days pass and Jerusalem remains in Richard's hands, you feel the tension of a ruler balancing military might with diplomacy, a king who must always be vigilant. Even in his greatest moment of triumph, you stand beside Richard as he gazes out over Jerusalem, a city both victorious and fraught with tension. The sun sets, casting long shadows over the Holy Sepulchre, and you feel the weight of history bearing down on Richard. The conquest is complete, but the true challenge has only just begun, maintaining control over a city that holds immense religious significance for Christians, Muslims, and Jews alike. Richard's role becomes that of a diplomat as much as a conqueror. You watch as he meets with local leaders, priests, merchants, and even emissaries from Saladin's court, his mind constantly calculating, seeking ways to keep Jerusalem stable under his rule. You feel the undercurrent of unease in the air, a reminder that every decision Richard makes could tip the balance toward peace or war. Historians still debate whether Richard's diplomatic efforts after Jerusalem's conquest were as significant as his military campaigns. Did his negotiations with Saladin and other leaders lay the groundwork for future Crusader successes? Or did they merely delay the inevitable? A quirky tidbit, Richard's fierce loyalty to his knights extended even to their horses, and he often ensured that his war horses were given the best care, including custom-made armor for battle. As you witness Richard's determined efforts to govern a city that is as much a symbol as a prize, you feel the complexity of leadership in this crucible of faith, politics, and war. The future of Jerusalem indeed. The future of the crusade itself lies in the balance. You stand beside Richard in the heart of Jerusalem as he navigates the growing challenges of maintaining peace in a city now under his control. The air is thick with tension as the various factions, Christian, Muslim, and Jewish, grapple with the reality of living under Crusader rule. Richard's mind is constantly engaged in delicate negotiations, balancing the needs of his own Crusader forces with the demands of the local populations. His nights are filled with meetings, discussions, and strategic planning as he works to keep his hold on the city. You watch as Richard skillfully handles these tense moments, using both diplomacy and force when necessary. He meets with local religious leaders, ensuring that they are treated with respect while maintaining Crusader dominance. There's a calculated calm in his demeanor, a quiet authority that commands respect. Yet, beneath this calm lies the constant pressure of leadership, the ever-present fear that the fragile peace could shatter at any moment. Historians debate how much Richard's diplomatic efforts truly influenced the stability of Jerusalem. Did his actions create lasting peace, or merely postpone inevitable conflict? A quirky detail. Despite the heavy political and military pressures, Richard found moments of solace in playing his lute, his favorite instrument, and sometimes even composed songs for his soldiers to lift their spirits during moments of respite. As you watch Richard's tireless efforts to preserve control over Jerusalem, you feel the immense pressure of ruling a city that holds so much meaning for so many. His leadership is a delicate balancing act, and the stakes could not be higher. You feel the weight of history bearing down as Richard's time in Jerusalem stretches on. His efforts to maintain control, tested by both internal strife and external threats. The city, a symbol of religious unity and division, becomes a fragile crown, one that Richard must constantly protect. You stand beside him as he meets with his generals and advisors, their faces grim as they discuss the looming threat of Saladin, the mighty Sultan of Egypt and Syria, who is poised to strike. Richard knows the cost of war all too well. His army, though formidable, has been stretched thin, and his forces are growing weary from years of fighting. You watch him strategize, his mind sharp as ever, calculating his next move with precision. He is a king, a warrior, and a diplomat, all rolled into one, and you feel the weight of each of those roles pressing down on him. Historians still debate the effectiveness of Richard's strategy in maintaining a fragile peace with Saladin. Was his decision to negotiate with Saladin one of prudence, or did it reveal his vulnerability in the face of overwhelming odds? A quirky tidbit: Richard had a deep love for animals, especially lions. He even kept a pair of lions as pets while he ruled, seeing in them the same fierce spirit that defined his crusading efforts. As you stand beside Richard, watching him prepare for what is to come, you feel the tension in the air, both a promise of impending conflict and the hope that Jerusalem might yet be preserved through diplomacy. You stand with Richard on the precipice of a turning point. The air is thick with tension, a storm of uncertain futures swirling around Jerusalem. The Crusaders have secured the city, but now the delicate balance between peace and war is teetering. Richard knows that the time for diplomacy is running out. Saladin's forces are growing stronger, and though the Pope's blessings still ring in his ears, Richard understands that the Holy Land must be defended with strength. You see Richard as he prepares for battle again, this time against Saladin's seasoned army. His body is weary, but his resolve is unshaken. He steps into his armor, each piece a reminder of the cost of his journey, his sacrifices, his choices, his legacy. You feel the weight of his crown as if it were your own, an eternal symbol of both power and responsibility. The camp is alive with the sounds of preparation, the clanging of swords, the tightening of reins, the murmurs of soldiers steeling themselves for another blood-soaked clash. Historians debate the wisdom of Richard's decision to face Saladin head-on. Was it a strategic move to solidify his claim to Jerusalem, or a final test of his resolve in the face of insurmountable odds? A quirky detail: Richard had a reputation for taking extra care with his battle gear, particularly his sword, which he believed to be blessed by holy relics. He was known to polish it religiously before every battle. As the sound of distant drums begins to fill the air, you feel the anticipation. Building this battle will decide the fate of Jerusalem. Richard knows that this is no longer just a fight for land, but a fight for faith and legacy. The sun beats down mercilessly as Richard leads his army toward the battlefield, where the dust and tension fill the air. The earth beneath you vibrates with the thunder of hooves. the cries of soldiers, and the sharp clash of swords as both sides prepare for the confrontation that will shape the future of the Holy Land. You see Richard mounted on his war horse, his face set with the same calm determination that has defined his every action since this crusade began. His eyes are focused not just on the battlefield before him, but on the larger stakes, the fate of Jerusalem, the power of his kingdom, and the legitimacy of his reign. The battle unfolds before your eyes in a blur of motion, crusaders charging forward with battle cries, Saladin's soldiers defending their ground with disciplined precision. You feel the intensity of each clash, the weight of history in every sword strike, and the passion of men fighting for a cause greater than themselves. Richard's leadership is evident as he directs his forces with military precision, rallying them even when the tide seems to turn against them. Historians debate whether Richard's role in the battle was purely strategic brilliance, or if his ability to inspire his troops and lead from the front was what truly turned the tide in his favor. A quirky tidbit: Richard was known for his fiery temper on the battlefield. It's said that he once famously berated a general for being too cautious, shouting, "A lion does not wait for prey to come to it. It goes out and takes it." As the battle rages, you feel the weight of each blow, the roar of war echoing through your very bones. This is the defining moment, where Richard's destiny and the fate of Jerusalem hang in the balance. You stand at the heart of the battlefield, where Richard's forces fight with unyielding resolve against Saladin's well-trained troops. The dust churns beneath the pounding hooves. The clash of steel rings in your ears, and you can taste the sweat and iron in the air. The battle rages on, but there is a shift. Richard's forces have broken through the lines. The Crusaders surge forward, their energy renewed by their leader's bold tactics and the weight of their sacred mission. You see Richard at the forefront, his sword raised high, his presence a beacon of strength amidst the chaos. His eyes are sharp, calculating the next move as he rides alongside his men. The tide of battle has turned, but Richard knows that victory is never guaranteed in war, especially in a conflict as fraught with significance as this one. Every step forward is hard won. Historians debate the extent to which Richard's leadership directly contributed to the success of the Crusaders in this battle. Was it his tactical brilliance, or his ability to inspire his men that made the difference? A quirky detail: during lulls in the battle, Richard would often ride along the front lines, offering his knights words of encouragement and even sharing a flask of wine to lift their spirits. As the sun begins to set over the battlefield, you sense that the momentum has shifted decisively in the Crusaders' favor. But Richard knows that this victory, though significant, is only a part of the larger, ongoing struggle for Jerusalem. The dust settles on the battlefield as the sounds of clashing swords and cries of victory gradually fade into the heavy silence of aftermath. The Crusaders have won, but the cost is high, both in lives and in spirit. You stand among the men as they tend to the wounded and gather their fallen comrades, the weight of war pressing down on each of them. Richard, though victorious, wears the heavy burden of leadership, his eyes scanning the battlefield, his face unreadable. You see Richard dismount as the wounded are brought forward, his presence a reassurance to his knights. He offers words of encouragement, his voice steady and calm. Even though you know the toll this battle has taken on him personally, the victory is his. But it has not come without sacrifice. His mind is already turning to what comes next, to the long and uncertain road that lies ahead for Jerusalem. Historians still argue whether Richard's personal loss in battle overshadowed his strategic brilliance. Did the sacrifices made during the war shape his decisions in the later stages of the crusade? A quirky tidbit after the battle. Richard reportedly took a brief moment to send a letter to his mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, in which he described his triumphs with his usual flair, but left out the casualties, emphasizing the glorious victory rather than the loss. As the day ends, you feel the weight of the moment. The victory is hard-earned, but the city of Jerusalem and the future of the Crusaders still hang in the balance. You walk through the quiet aftermath of the battlefield as the evening sky darkens, casting long shadows over the weary Crusaders. The city of Jerusalem looms in the distance, a shimmering promise of both triumph and new trials. Richard stands alone for a moment, looking at the horizon with a solemn expression. The campaign to reclaim the Holy Land has reached a crucial juncture, and despite the recent victory, the task ahead is far from over. As the Crusader army sets up camp, you see Richard deep in conversation with his commanders. There is no time for rest, only the careful planning of what must come next. The Crusaders have secured the land surrounding Jerusalem, but Saladin's forces are still a powerful threat, and tensions remain high between Richard and his allies. Richard knows that Jerusalem cannot be held without strategic alliances, and his next move will be critical. Historians debate the long-term impact of Richard's military and diplomatic strategies after his victory at the Battle of Arsuf. Did his post-battle decisions strengthen or fracture the Crusader states? A quirky detail: Richard was known for his peculiar ability to rally men with simple, direct speeches. One of his favorites was telling his soldiers, "We may be few, but we fight with the fire of lions." As night falls over the Crusader camp, you sense the weight of the decisions to come. Jerusalem is within reach, but Richard knows that the final conquest will demand even more from him and his men. The morning sun rises over the Crusader camp, casting a golden glow over the faces of men who have been hardened by months of conflict and the promise of the Holy Land just beyond the horizon. You stand with Richard as he leads his forces toward the walls of Jerusalem, the city now within their grasp, but guarded by the formidable army of Saladin. Richard's focus is unwavering, his gaze fixed on the city that has called to him for so long. The tension is palpable as the siege begins. You see Richard oversee the construction of siege towers and trebuchets, his strategic mind in full motion. Every action is carefully planned. This is no longer just a battle for land, but for the very soul of the crusade. His men work tirelessly, driven by the shared dream of capturing Jerusalem. But the weariness of the journey is clear in their faces. The city ahead holds the promise of glory, but it is also fraught with danger. Historians debate the moral and strategic implications of the siege. Was Richard's approach one of necessary aggression? Or did his relentless pursuit of victory strain alliances and undermine his own kingdom's stability? A quirky detail: Richard was known for his love of falconry, and during one of the quiet moments of the siege, he was seen with his falcon perched on his arm. A rare moment of peace amidst the chaos of war. As you watch the Crusaders prepare for the siege, you feel the weight of the endeavor. The final push toward Jerusalem will require all of Richard's skill, strength, and leadership. The siege of Jerusalem continues, and you stand amidst the roaring clash of Crusader and Muslim forces. The sounds of battle, the grunts of men fighting, and the crashing of siege engines fill the air as the Crusaders advance. The heat is unbearable, the sun beating down relentlessly on the soldiers. Dust kicks up from the ground, mixing with the smell of sweat and the faint scent of burning oil. You can hear the steady rhythm of marching feet, punctuated by the occasional shout from commanders issuing orders. Richard, is at the forefront, ever vigilant, riding along the lines of his army, offering encouragement to his weary soldiers. Despite the unrelenting pressure, you can see his strategic mind at work, organizing his troops, ensuring that every move is calculated. He rides into the fray alongside his knights, cutting through the enemy with unyielding precision. His sword is raised high, a symbol of his unbreakable resolve. Historians still debate whether Richard's insistence on taking Jerusalem by force was a strategic necessity, or whether his pride as a leader of the crusade clouded his judgment. Was there room for diplomacy? Or was the conquest destined to be brutal, a quirky tidbit Richard? Despite his hardened image, I had a deep respect for the chivalric code, and before each battle, he would spend a few moments in prayer, asking for divine guidance. It was said that his knights respected him not just for his strength, but for his devotion to the ideals of knighthood. As the battle rages on, you feel the tension building. Richard's force push forward, the goal now within reach. But the cost of taking the city has yet to be determined. The gates of Jerusalem loom closer, their ancient stone walls scarred by the relentless battering of Richard's siege engines. The Crusaders are close, so close now that you can almost taste victory in the thick, dust-laden air. You feel the pounding rhythm of Richard's army as they press forward, wave after wave of soldiers, knights, and archers, all united under one banner, the Holy Land. The strategy is clear now, Richard's mind sharp as ever, guiding his men in one final push. He leads his forces with a focused determination, not just as a king, but as a man who has carried the weight of this mission since the very start. The sound of arrows flying, the clash of swords, and the heavy groans of battering rams fill your ears. There is no turning back now. Jerusalem will either be taken, or the Crusader dream will shatter before their eyes. Historians debate whether Richard's direct engagement in the assault was a masterstroke or a reckless risk. Did his leadership on the front lines rally his men to victory? Or did it make him a vulnerable target in a battle of such magnitude? A quirky tidbit, Richard was known for his fiery temper, but he also had a reputation for showing deep affection for his men, often offering them food and drink after particularly hard-fought engagements. It's said he once personally fed a wounded soldier who had fallen in battle. As the sun sets on this long day, you sense the monumental nature of what's happening. Jerusalem is finally within reach. But as the city's walls crumble, the true cost of this victory will be revealed. Richard's leadership, his courage, and his unwavering resolve will determine the fate of this holy city. As the walls of Jerusalem begin to give way, you feel the shifting atmosphere of triumph and tension mingle in the air. Crusader soldiers flood into the city, their faces a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The gates, once unbreachable, now crumble beneath the force of Richard's relentless siege. The sounds of the battle are fading, replaced by the shouts of victory, but you can sense the weight of the city itself, heavy with the history, the bloodshed, and the centuries of conquest and loss. Richard rides at the front of his men, his armor glinting in the waning sunlight, his expression resolute but shadowed by the burden of leadership. You watch as he moves into the city, giving commands, ensuring that his forces maintain order in the chaos of victory. The streets of Jerusalem, now under Crusader control, are filled with the sounds of men shouting in victory. Yet, beneath it all, there's an undeniable sadness. The knowledge that this victory has come at a great cost. Historians continue to debate the moral and religious implications of the capture of Jerusalem. Was this the fulfillment of the Crusaders' mission? Or was it a tragic and bloody conquest that left a lasting scar on both the conquerors and the conquered? A quirky detail, Richard, despite his reputation for fiery determination, often sought moments of personal reflection in the quiet of Jerusalem's holy sites. After the city's capture, he spent time in prayer at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, quietly contemplating the significance of his victory. As you witness Richard's triumph, you sense the immense weight of this moment. The city that has been fought for, bled for, and prayed for is finally under Richard's control. Yet, the future of Jerusalem remains uncertain, and the price of its conquest will be paid in ways that neither Richard nor the Crusaders can foresee. The victorious cries of the Crusaders echo throughout the streets of Jerusalem, but you feel the complex undercurrents of this conquest running deeper than the celebratory cheers. Richard, having entered the city as a conqueror, now faces the burden of leadership. The gates of Jerusalem, once a symbol of resistance, now stand open before him. But the challenges of holding this city are far from over. As Richard surveys the captured land, you sense the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. The city is sacred to so many, and its future is uncertain. You watch as Richard meets with his commanders, issuing orders to secure the city and keep peace among the different factions. His men, battle-worn but triumphant, now face the delicate task of ruling Jerusalem. The city is not just a military prize, but a place of immense religious and cultural significance. And Richard's decisions in the coming days will determine whether the Crusader presence here is stable or fleeting. Historians debate whether Richard's approach to governance, balancing military control with diplomatic negotiations, was enough to secure Jerusalem for the Crusaders, or if it simply delayed the inevitable conflicts that would arise. A quirky tidbit: despite the gravity of his task, Richard's legendary wit was still in full force. It's said that during one of the first council meetings in Jerusalem, he lightened the mood by making a joke about the state of the city's infrastructure, drawing laughter even from his most serious commanders. As you witness the complex task of ruling a city so sacred, you sense the weight of history on Richard's shoulders. His military victory has been achieved. But now, the true test lies in whether he can keep Jerusalem under Crusader control. You stand in the midst of the bustling, yet tense atmosphere of Jerusalem, as Richard's forces secure the city and establish their dominance. The once pure sanctity of the holy city now feels like a chessboard, with every decision carrying consequences, not just for the Crusaders, but for the many religious factions within its walls. The air is heavy with the sounds of negotiations, the clash of different beliefs, and the uneasy murmurs of the local population, many of whom are uncertain of their fate under Crusader rule. Richard's presence is commanding as he navigates the complex web of politics. You see him holding councils with his knights, religious leaders, and local dignitaries. He is not just a conqueror. Now, he is a ruler, trying to maintain the delicate balance between his Crusader army and the Christian, Jewish, and Muslim populations. His decisions will shape the future of Jerusalem, and the weight of those decisions is felt in every move he makes. Historians debate whether Richard's treatment of Jerusalem's religious communities was diplomatic or deeply flawed. Did his leadership foster the possibility of lasting peace, or was it doomed from the start? A quirky detail: Richard's somewhat unconventional approach to diplomacy included a tendency to send personal letters to his most trusted commanders during moments of crisis. often ending with humorous anecdotes to lighten the mood and maintain morale. As the days pass, you feel the weight of Jerusalem's future hang in the balance. Richard's leadership is a fragile thread, weaving through the complex fabric of power, faith, and war. Will his efforts to maintain peace prove successful? Or will the city's conquest be the beginning of a new wave of conflict? You stand in the aftermath of Richard's victory. As the echoes of his time in Jerusalem fade into history, the city, once a symbol of religious conflict and conquest, now carries the imprint of Richard's leadership both in the victories won and the complex legacy left behind. The Crusader presence is firmly entrenched, but the question of Jerusalem's future remains an open one. Can the city, now divided between faiths, sustain the delicate balance Richard tried to maintain? Richard, though victorious, now faces the lingering tensions between his kingdom, the Pope, and his own men. Jerusalem, conquered and occupied, has become the site of further negotiations, not just with the Muslim leaders, but within the Crusader ranks themselves. You see Richard, once so certain of his mission, now navigating the delicate waters of peace and conquest. He knows that the price of holding Jerusalem is higher than any battle could have prepared him for. Historians continue to debate Richard's role in the Crusade's success and ultimate failure. Was his conquest of Jerusalem a lasting triumph, or merely a momentary victory in the ongoing struggle for the Holy Land? A poignant detail, Richard, despite all the wars and politics, is remembered for his compassion during his later years in Jerusalem, occasionally slipping away from his royal duties to visit the sick and wounded, offering a moment of solace amidst the hardship of war. As you watch the Crusader kingdoms begin to solidify their hold over the Holy Land, you realize that history is not just written by victories, but by the choices made in the aftermath. Richard's story, full of glory, sacrifice, and difficult decisions, leaves a legacy that will ripple through the ages. Now, as the sun sets over Jerusalem, you reflect on the lion-hearted king, whose name will forever be tied to the fates of kings, armies, and empires.